Lionel Messi's coming to South Florida. Ah!
Mm. It's
Okay.
a huge deal.
Eh,
Well, you may not care. It's a
well,
huge deal. You're on the East Coast. I'm in Southwest Florida. It's a huge big deal. Big Latin community.
I
One of
know.
the most, arguably the greatest player, one of the greatest players of all time, coming to a market like Miami. That is phenomenal. The ticket sales are already through the roof. I'm seeing, and I don't just mean in Miami. They're going to be. I've seen across the country what some of the tickets are going for future matches. And I'm not a huge MLS guy. Anybody who knows me knows I pay attention to soccer once every 4 years, and that's usually during the World Cup. I mean, I do watch some of the Premier League sometimes, but I think is absolutely phenomenal, and it gets much better ratings in this country than I think people realize. Even though a lot of
It
games are on
does.
early in the morning, but I think it's great for the MLS. I mean, the MLS is huge in markets, like Seattle, Portland, Miami's a big. There's a lot of markets where the MLS is big. This is good for the sport. It's good for the league, which obviously is not one of the greatest quote unquote soccer/football leagues in the country. But this is great. Messi turned down 3 years, 1.6 billion. Let me say that again. He turned down a 3 year, $1.6 billion contract to go play in Saudi Arabia. Turned it down.
See, now
He's
there's
certainly
the
not.
thing.
We're not crying for him. He's going to make money off the Apple Plus TV, which is what the MLS is going to be on. He's got ownership stake. He's going to be fine.
But there's the right thing there. And I'll tell you what, I am not a huge soccer fan. I would rather watch English soccer than watch
Yep.
MLS. I find it to be a lot more engaging. I find it to be
Oh,
a
that's
lot more
no
skilled.
doubt about it.
I,
No doubt
I have a
about
I have a greater time doing it. The MLS to me is basically in many ways double A,
it.
because
Yeah.
of some of the talent. And that's not to say that it's bad talent, but American talent simply does not equate on the world stage
No, no
when it
question.
comes to soccer.
Because
So
of the money. Yeah.
I enjoy it, but in this case with Messi, I give him great chops. He turned down the money from the bloody Saudis because he says his wife doesn't want to live in the Middle East. Well, I think also, let's be honest, Pete, I think what's happened in the last couple of days with Live Golf and the PGA Tour, I think that I don't think it's a coincidence that that happens and then Messi announces that he's going to come to the MLS and come to Miami and he's going to walk away from the Saudi money. I think he's smart. He doesn't want to put himself into that mix, into that political nonsense, into that quagmire, and be seen basically taking money from killers. So
Yeah. Well,
I give him a lot of credit for that. I wonder if that's going to start to be, with a lot of great athletes, more the norm than the exception. Because let's face it, if the Saudis give you $1.5 billion, Pete, what are you going to do with it? I mean, you can only spend so much money. I mean, really, if you got $1 billion,
well,
Messi already is a multimillionaire. He's got all the money
well,
he could possibly need to take care of his family. So you take a chance where you're going to take the money from the killers and you're going to be seen as in the same bed as they are. I
all
think
right.
what
You,
he's
you're
made is a
grouping an
smart political
entire.
move.
Not everybody in Saudi Arabia feels like you do. I
Of
mean, it's
course they don't, because it's a
responsible.
closed society.
It's responsible. They're not all. You can't lump an entire nation in because the politicians and the people in charge are giving away a whole lot of money.
I applaud him for the fact that he didn't take the money from the Saudis. He's not taking the blood money. He doesn't need it. He can make a lot of money here with the deal in MLS and with Miami and with Beckham. The franchise will probably do very well. They'll sell a lot of tickets. But he's 35 years of age. He's not the Lionel Messi of 5 years ago. He's still a brilliant soccer player.
Yep.
And Pete, this comes from a guy who, as a kid, I was on the sidelines of the Fort Lauderdale Strikers broadcasts for 3 seasons when the NASL was big, and that's when they were bringing over these wonderfully magnificent, decrepit, old
Yeah.
players. A lot of them who had just enough to still make it, but their skills had eroded to the point where many of them were just shadows of themselves. I hope that doesn't happen with Messi. He'll be, 35, 36? He's still in
Yeah.
his prime. But I now have to wonder how much he's going to bring a lot of name value to the MLS. I don't know what he's actually going to bring on the field, seeing as he's not going to play on fields that have turf. If you don't have real grass, he's not going to play.
Yeah.
That's a
Well,
big key.
look, I think he's going to absolutely help the league. There's no question about it. I think he's going to be kind of like LeBron James. I mean, LeBron still has a lot left in the tank as far as his age goes. And Messi has some. Messi's not what he was, obviously, but he's going to help the league. He's going to help his team. He's got enough left in the tank where he's going to absolutely make a difference. And fans and a huge Latin America community and where in your area is gigantic, and maybe it helps bring other players over of his ilk. Maybe not quite, up
Maybe.
to his par because he's one of the best ever, but maybe other guys start to think about it, and maybe
I say we all got to calm down a little bit. Yeah, Messi's here, but still, the MLS is. If you ask me to watch soccer, I'm not watching the MLS. I'm turning it on right now to make sure that I get something overseas, and I get UK, and I get the English Premier League, because to me, that is incredible sport.
Like I said, it's not even close. It's like why the National Hockey League is the best hockey league in the world. I mean, the Russian league is pretty good. There are a couple other leagues around the world that are okay, but the National Hockey League is the creme de la creme. Same thing with the Premier League and a lot of other European soccer leagues are the creme de la creme. No question about it. I'm just saying,
every time the World Cup comes around, the men's team gets embarrassed because they're not as good as the rest of the talent on the world stage. The women are stunningly good at what they do and have been for a long time. But United States men's national team, quite frankly, I've got friends of mine who work the Premier League, and they call it a joke every single year. They keep saying that the Americans are getting better, and they're going, where? We've been hearing that for 20 years.
Yeah, I know, and every year, and I know this is a young
every
team.
Year.
I do think the next World Cup, the United States team is going to. I mean, they did some damage, about 8 years ago.
Say it. Tape's running.
I mean, I think they're an up and coming. They're a very, very young team, and I think they've shown signs of promise. But I'm not worried about that. But I mean, if they can just get some second tier players that would be maybe third stringers or second stringers in the Premier League and come over to the MLS, get a bunch of players like that, kind of helps the league. But we'll see. But this is a good thing for the MLS. It's a good thing for Miami, and South Florida is in the news again.
I go back to the NASL days where they were telling us it's a great sport. It's going to grow. It's going to be big. It's going to be the biggest thing in America. Please stop the bullshit, okay? It gets a lot of fans, and the ratings are good, and families love it. But let's stop with the nonsense. It's not going to be the biggest sport in America. It's never going to happen. And while I have a lot of friends who work in the MLS, it is not the best soccer to watch because the American men are not the best players in the world. And we've been told for 20 years they're going to be. Hasn't happened, Dan. So I think you have a guy like Messi, bring him in, enjoy him, but don't keep blowing smoke up my ass that the MLS is going to be a world-class league, because they're still below the Premier Leagues and a lot of the secondary leagues in Europe as well.
I was surprised. I went to law school. I lived in Kansas City when I was going to law school, and Kansas City actually really loves their team, their MLS team or whatever it is. That's about the only time I've ever heard of any city really enjoying soccer here in the United States. I remember growing up, that was 40 years ago. Remember, Ed, it was like soccer's the fastest growing sport in the country. Right. And they've said that for 20 or 30 years. How is that possible? How could it be the fastest growing sport in the country for 30 years and still it's a non-factor? Like, how can that be possible?
Well, here's the other thing, too. I mean, when they keep telling us that soccer is the kids are playing soccer, so the sport is going to get better. The leagues are going to get better. The American men are going to get better. Look, the American women have gotten so much better. They're brilliant to sit and watch. But we've been hearing now for 30 years, we've got kids who now are grown out, aged out grandparents, who are taking their grandkids to go see MLS. And MLS is good. Let's stop. It's good. But it's not.
Nobody cares about soccer, Ed. Don't call it good. Nobody cares here about soccer. Just say it.
Oh, come on. That's bullshit, and you know
You're
it.
Talking all this nonsense about, the European soccer. Nobody cares, period. Okay? It's just a non-factor, except for maybe a city here. Like I said, Kansas City, they like it because what else does Kansas City have? They have the Chiefs and the Royals, and that's it. They don't have NHL. They don't have NBA. So then they glob onto the soccer. That's it. Nobody cares.
Dan Jacobs, ladies and gentlemen, get him on 104.3 in Denver and let him hammer this. Go, Pete.
I think there's a lot of people. Kansas City, Seattle, Portland, Los Angeles. Even in New England, they draw like 20,000 plus. Seattle draws like crazy. I think people care, but it's not a sports talk show. Nobody's ever called up a sports radio show, my knowledge, and said, and doing this almost 37 years, and said, I want to talk about soccer. Exactly. Now the World Cup, different story. World Cup brings up a whole bunch of different type of fans and everything else, different ethnic backgrounds. Nobody's ever going to say, Ed, that the MLS is anything close to the European leagues. Nobody.
Never. And it never will be. It never will be.
The problem is, I've been talking about this for decades, is that the youth of America playing soccer, which there's more kids playing soccer, we know, than baseball. Everybody understands that. The problem is these kids, after they graduate high school, on the whole, if they're playing soccer, they lose interest. They do not follow through for the rest of their youth. And that's it. I mean, they play youth soccer and then they're done.
But the thing that people have to realize is that, unlike Europe, we have a lot to do here. I mean, the kids can play soccer, hockey, basketball, baseball, football, rugby. You know, they have this massive amount of sports that they can play. And the professional leagues in the MLS, I know kids who've looked at it, who look back on their junior careers and say, there really wasn't much promise there, and the team sucked and the coaches sucked, and I really couldn't make any money at it, and I couldn't do anything. So I went and I became a doctor instead. You know, it just, there's, in Europe, you are born into that, man. Shit, if you're not part of soccer, you're not part of anything. It's like you're a second-class citizen in many ways. But over here, we got too much to do.
Yeah. Oh, it doesn't bother me.
Doesn't bother me.
Look, again, I follow the World Cup every 4 years. I love it. I enjoy it. I watch almost all the matches, and that's fine. I can't remember the last time I watched even 2 minutes of an MLS game. But I'll tell you what, if Messi's on for a second, I'd switch over for 3 or 4 minutes. I'm not gonna sit there and watch the whole game, but I'd want to see the atmosphere. I want to see the crowd. I want to see. I'd look at it for a minute or two. I think the ratings will be fantastic in South Florida. I think they will be fantastic.
Well, it probably will be because of Messi, but I still go back to a lot of the people I know who cover soccer, who work in soccer, and those who are part of the U.S. national team, who have told me, frankly, over the years, we're a mess. The U.S. national team is a complete disaster on the men's side. But on the women's side, it's getting just as bad.
The only time you get consistent sellouts as these stadiums, Dan, is if you do the doubleheader. You have a friendly either before or after the match involving the MLS team, and then that will bring, the European teams or the United States against somebody, the national team, that will get stadiums to capacity of 40 to 60,000. But other than that, I think Seattle sells out everything, Portland, Kansas City. I don't know many other markets that sell out. Maybe Dallas. I don't know many markets that would sell out games on a regular basis. So whatever.
Hey, Dan, I'm going to show my ignorance right here. Does Denver even have a team anymore?
Yeah, the funny thing is, when the Nuggets were really, really bad,
which is a lot,
right before they got Carmelo, we did do a survey at like a public interest survey of our people in Denver, sports fans. The Rapids, which is actually owned by Stan Kroenke, who owns the Avs and Nuggets as well. The Rapids actually were above the Nuggets at that time. This was probably 20 years ago when we did this survey of, it wasn't listeners, it was just people in the marketplace. And they actually did outrank the Nuggets at that time. Not anymore, though.